back in the bag again. Whoa, yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Splash City Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hartman. Today's show, I have Concordia College head men's basketball coach Tyler Bormann joining me to talk about the Cobbers 20-win season, the MIAC tournament. We'll talk about the lone men's team from the MIAC making the Division III national tournament, Gustavus Adolphus College, and what makes them so tough to guard. We'll also talk a little bit about recruiting in the upper Midwest and how that's changed at the D3 level over the last couple of years. So really fun conversation with Tyler. I've known him for quite a few years now, almost 20 years at this point, but we love sharing some old stories about the Red River Valley, Breckenridge, DGF, the Heart of Lakes Conference, learning from Bob Torgrimson up at DGF, and really enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you do as well. Part of the conversation stemmed from me going down to the Gustavus gym to see them knock off St. John's and get that automatic bid. There was some small outside chances that other MIAC teams were going to make the men's tournament, but they did not. Gustavus is the lone team. They actually open against Bethany Lutheran out of Mankato, Minnesota this week in the Division III men's tournament. On the women's side, the number one seed Concordia lost to Bethel. So Bethel gets the automatic bid, but the MIAC gets 4 women's teams in the Division III tournament. So Concordia earns an at-large bid, Gustavus earns an at-large bid, and St. Mary's. So 4 MIAC women's teams in the Division III national tournament starting this week. So a lot of great action for local fans in the MIAC. The NSIC is also going on down in Sioux Falls. If you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and follow on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, YouTube. We are on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. Love to see you there. Love to interact with you. Make sure you share with your friends and follow along with the conversation as we go throughout March and beyond, of course. So without further ado, let's get to that conversation I had with Coach Tyler Bormann from Concordia College. All right, today we're talking MIAC hoops. The Concordia College Cobbers just wrapped up their 3rd straight trip to the MIAC tournament. First time that's happened in a while. They went toe-to-toe with champion Gustavus twice this year, including an overtime battle up in Moorhead. Coach Tyler Bormann is with me today to talk about building that program up, matching up with the Gusties. We'll talk about a bunch of other topics, but Tyler, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. Followed you and your success a long time, starting at the high school level. But just to give the listeners a little background, why don't you walk through kind of your progression as a coach? Because I know you started, similar to me, where you were coaching high school ball while you were in college, and then obviously you've elevated to the D3 level. So where did you start? How did that first job go, and how did it take you to Concordia?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I got to give a lot of credit to my high school coach, Wade Johnson, who kind of a funny story. He knew I was interested in getting into coaching. I was going in my sophomore year here at Concordia as a student. I bumped into him in the summer, and he said, Tyler, I have a good kind of coaching friend, colleague who's looking for a junior varsity high school coach. And I think you do a great job. And it just so happened that that was at DGF High School with Bob Torgrimson, and Bob had had a Hall of Fame career on both sides of the river, both at West Fargo and in North Dakota, and then a couple stops in Minnesota as well. And it was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up, and so I had a tremendous opportunity to be Bob Torgrimson's assistant coach at DGF High School for 3 years while I was an undergraduate here at Concordia. And I think for me that kind of just kind of cemented what I wanted to do with my career. It really I had a passion and an interest. I would say I had an interest in coaching, and then after spending those 3 years with Coach Torgy and just kind of seeing some of the behind the scenes, we jump in his van and go live scouting on a Tuesday night when we didn't play, and I was kind of all about all of it, everything that kind of went into being a coach, and the relationships obviously with the players is paramount, and seeing them develop. And I'll give Torgy a lot of credit because I think he put a lot of trust into a young guy who certainly didn't know a whole lot but was willing to learn. And So for me, it was a great opportunity, and a great experience. I learned a lot about the game of basketball, a lot that, to be honest with you, today, I mean, there are elements of our program that terminology and things that we do that I would say, goes all the way back to what we did, when I was working with Torgy at DGF, and so it's kind of cool for me sometimes to just reflect on that and realize that everyone I've had the opportunity to work for has really kind of helped create who I am as a coach, and I've taken a little bit from everybody. Upon graduating here, I was really interested in trying to get into the college game. And so I was fortunate enough to get hired as one of the graduate assistants at Augustana College in Sioux Falls, under Tom Billiter. And Coach Billiter was great as well to me and my development as a head coach. Just learned a lot from Coach Billiter and also the staff. I mean, anytime you're at a a small college, Division II, Division III, I mean, the staff obviously has a big impact on the type of experience that you have, especially as a graduate assistant coach. And so I learned under Coach Billiter, but also Ryan Larson and Jaden Olson, who are our two full-time assistant coaches, and then Rob Flint and I were GAs together, and Rob is still a really good friend of mine. And yeah, Detroit Lakes took over the girls program here recently after a really successful run with the boys program, and he's also a Cobber alum. So it's funny how like the 3 degrees of separation, right? Like everybody's connected in a lot of different ways, and so that was a really really transformative experience for me to be down there for 2 years, and the last 2 years of the North Central Conference was a really great time to be there. Some fabulous games. It was kind of a historical time from the standpoint that one of the best Division II leagues in the country was folding. With a number of members going Division I, and then the others going into what is now, a gauntlet, the NSIC.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool time to be down there. Really appreciated my opportunity. And then following that kind of 2-year stint as a GA, I spent 3 years out in Wisconsin at Lakeland University as a full-time assistant coach. Lakeland's a Division III school in the NAC, Northern Athletics Conference. And had a fabulous experience out there as well. Worked for Coach Onenson. And then the opportunity to come back this direction presented itself when Matt Merkin was a head coach at what was then Jamestown College, now the University of Jamestown. And Matt was looking for a full-time assistant. And, Matt was at Wayne State, and we kind of had some coaching connections between the two of us, guys that I had worked with who knew Matt really well. And, I'm really thankful for Coach Merkin giving me that opportunity. I learned a lot from him in that 1 year that I was out at Jamestown. And to be honest with you, then Steve, life kind of changed for me. My wife and I found out we were going to have our first child, and the life of a small college assistant coach is not always super conducive to being, in my opinion, maybe a great father and husband, in that you're just really you're sacrificing a lot of time, and I wanted to be really intentional with my time at that point, and so I was kind of looking for some other opportunities, and was really fortunate to be hired at Breckenridge High School as a head boys basketball coach. A program that had a lot of success under Dean Haugo. And I had coached against Dean, and it kind of just from afar had a lot of respect for the job that Dean had done there. And so my wife and I, and it was like a week after my son was born, we packed up the U-Haul and moved to Breckenridge, and I really enjoyed 4 years there in a great basketball community that really lives and breathes its athletics, and really was fortunate to coach some really tough-minded student athletes. Like, we just had some really tough guys, and I love that about the guys I coached in Breck. And wasn't necessarily looking at that point to make a move, but the head job at Moorhead High School opened up, and knowing the tradition of Moorhead basketball, and seeing it as an opportunity to maybe challenge myself too at the highest level, and Class 4A in Minnesota, I jumped at the opportunity to apply for that position, and was fortunate enough to be hired there. And I think at a time for me where, I was looking for that challenge. And it was a challenge initially. I mean, we struggled out of the gates my first year and kind of had to figure out, what it was going to take for guys in our program to compete at that level. And again, fortunate to coach some really talented student athletes, but also guys who I think were really bought into what we were trying to do. When I've always said it's important to find people you can lose with first before you win, because I think you find out what people are made of.
Yeah.
And we had some guys that had to stick through it through kind of a tough first year. And we kind of had to find our way through that second year. And, late in that second year, you could kind of see some things start to flip. We had some young guys playing that were starting to figure out how to compete at that level. And then we were really fortunate. We had two really strong years, my third and fourth year. And we had won back-to-back 20 games and made it to section semifinals before losing to a really good Buffalo, program twice there. And just felt like we had things in a really good place. And honestly, Steve, I really wasn't looking to move. We were back in Fargo Moorhead. I really, really enjoyed who I was coaching and who I was working for at Moorhead High. And then the Concordia job opened, and it's kind of funny sometimes when you least expect doors to open,
Mhm.
those can sometimes be the most, some of the most exciting opportunities, I guess. And so for me, I was blocks away, I was across town at Moorhead High and this job opened. And, it didn't take me long to figure that this was an opportunity I had to at least take a look at. Jobs in the MIAC don't come open very often. And there's
Mhm.
a reason for that. I think it's a fabulous league. It's a tremendous level to coach. Division III basketball, you and I were visiting off air. I don't think it gets enough respect, but I
Mhm.
get to coach some just outstanding student athletes. I mean, guys
Yeah.
who get it done in the classroom, get it done in the community, and are really talented.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think it's the right level. It's kind of the right balance in being able to be the coach that I want to be, the mentor that I want to be, and gives me opportunity to compete at a high level. And so, when the job was offered, it was really exciting to be able to come back to my alma mater.
Yeah, very cool. It's a great journey, great story. For any aspiring coaches that might be listening, there's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of, like you were saying, you started Concordia, DGF, then you're down in Sioux Falls at Augustana, you're Wisconsin. Like there's some dedication to the craft, but once you get that taste, it's pretty hard to turn down. I want to hear from you, Tyler. What's your favorite Torgumsome story or anecdote that you got?
Yeah, boy, there's a few of them. Some of them I probably can't share on air. Torgy was one of a kind,
Yeah.
he did a tremendous job over a long career. And also, I'll be honest, like, he's one of the coaches, and there were a number of coaches like this that, they just did it for so long at such a high level. It's hard to do that now. I just think the,
Mhm.
the the landscape of high school athletics has changed.
Yeah.
I would say there was one time, and my wife actually remembers this probably as well as I do. We were playing in the Moorhead High School holiday tournament, and we had a really good team that year. I think it was the year we went to state. Jake Driscoll was our point guard, freshman point guard, who, really talented, but also just super young and kind of naive. And sometimes, youth is bliss. You don't really
Mhm.
understand the magnitude of the situation. We had Adam Holte, big 6'10", kind of physical post player. You don't see that often at the D2 or at the 2A level.
Yep.
And then Tommy Costello was kind of our lone senior, was just a great leader. We just had a really cool mix. And we're playing in the holiday tournament, and I don't remember. I think it was a call that maybe didn't go our way. And, Torgy's kind of like kneeling by the score table. And all of a sudden he just collapses. And my wife to this day thought he had a heart attack. And it was just his way of kind of just like, demonstrating he didn't quite agree with the call, right? He just like
Mm.
falls to the floor.
Very
And
subtle.
we knew as assistants he was fine. He was just being Torgy. But I think half
Yeah.
the crowd like thought maybe, he was
Yeah.
having a medical incident, and
Yeah.
he just he had a way to kind of get his point across,
Yep.
as a lot of the coaches kind of in that generation did.
Yep.
Yeah, Tori was one of a kind, but I learned a lot from him. I'm
Yeah.
really, really grateful for the opportunity he gave me.
Yeah, he was one of the first I remember as a coach, young coach, he was one of the first guys that I remember wanted to force baseline because I remember growing up, everyone said like, "Don't let him go baseline, don't let him go baseline," and he was just loved to keep you on a side, force you into that corner, keep you down there, pin you down, and just like take away your options. And I still remember that about Torgy.
Yeah, one of the things I think, yeah, he's a tremendous basketball coach, but I think the thing that I still, I still take from a lot of what I learned is he had a great attention to detail.
Mhm.
I mean, when we watch film together, there were things he'd pick up on the film that in the moment seemed a little bit just minuscule. Like as a young assistant, I think there are times where I'm like, does that really matter?
Yeah.
Is that important? And I think he really there was no detail that was too small. And the one thing, and you mentioned defensively, I mean, his teams, they were going to dictate defensively.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really took from him. I mean, our program here, we hang our hat on the defensive end of the floor. We're going to put a lot of time, energy, and pride into how we guard. I think it's shown the last, the last couple of years. And while philosophically we don't guard the same way we did when I was with Torgy, the belief system that you need to dictate a little bit, or you need to have a mindset defensively that you're not just going to react. Comes from my time with him, and there are different ways to do that. You mentioned forcing sideline baseline. I mean, coach was a big believer in that. But it was a dictating mindset. It was a
Yeah.
mindset that like defense was going to have an impact on a nightly basis. And that's something that has always kind of remained for me from my time with him.
Yeah. So you brought up Concordia and your teams now. Just curious on like what you see are the biggest differences or because I remember being at Concordia as well one year under Rich Glass, where I remember the details being so much, like you could get into so many more things at the D3 level than you could at high school, just because of the kids are a little bit better, they're a little bit better athletes. You're just teaching different things. What do you see as someone who's coached a lot of high school basketball? What are the biggest transitions or the toughest things that you see kids have to adjust to when they get to college?
It's a great question. And this might seem kind of surface level, but I think it's extremely, just real with what we see. The physicality piece is real. It is. I mean, young men come into any program in our league as talented 18, maybe 19-year-olds, and a lot of them been well coached. I mean, we recruit guys who have been well coached. But when you're competing against 22, 21, 22-year-olds who have been at this level for 3 years and understand what it means to truly be physical on a finish, or being able to finish through physicality, that's something you can't really rep that out until you're here and you're
Mhm.
spending 70 practices, with our program. I see that with our freshmen. There comes a point at some point, usually during the freshman year, where that light bulb kind of goes off, and usually it's when they realize that they can play through that physicality and that they're more prepared for it. Um, I think sometimes, at the college level, it can be overstated that like, the game is different when I'll be honest, I mean, simplicity wins. Yeah,
Yeah.
you look at teams in our league that have success. There aren't a whole lot of secrets. They're very good at a few things that they take pride in. But I think the physicality piece is paramount, because you can't compete at the same level as 18, 19-year-old when the game's called differently, it's
Mhm.
officiated differently,
Yep.
the speed of the game. So I think that's the biggest piece. And to that point, like, we don't do a lot of things X's and O's different than I did as a high school coach.
Yeah.
Or if we do it differently, it's not more complex. We're not
Yeah.
reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to outsmart anybody. But I do think the consistency piece and the physicality at this level, your margin for error is so much smaller. You can go
Mhm.
in and play really, really well, and if you don't take care of the ball for a 3-minute stretch, like, that's a difference in the game, and it might turn a
Yep.
winnable game into a game you're losing by double digits. And I think that the margin for error and the physicality is just very different than what it is at the high school level, and it takes some
Mhm.
time for student athletes to figure that out.
Yeah, I took my son and went with some friends to the MIAC championship last night, and that's like the thing that stands out to me as someone who's been watching a lot more high school this year in person is just, you got some strong guys and some physical players, and they're just they're not calling fouls on a little bump. Like you have to play through and adjust to that. So do you see Padani from St. John's freshman obviously had a big year, but do you see in your league freshmen maybe needing a little bit more time, like because everyone gets super excited about the Division I level and all the freshman hype, and it's Cam Boozer and it's Kingston Flemings and AJ DeBonsa, but like at your level, do the freshmen need more time typically to get accustomed to that physicality?
I I think your typical freshman probably does, and obviously, Peyton Podani's had a tremendous year at St. John's. JJ Semenko at Augsburg had a fabulous freshman year. We had a freshman here in Peyton Shell from Minot High who had an outstanding freshman year, and we've had freshmen come in and be able to impact the game. But I do think it's harder. I there are skill sets that always translate, right? If you can shoot the basketball, that's a skill set that translates to any level. Where I think it's hardest is on the defensive end.
Mhm,
I think what you find is, oftentimes guys come into the college level, like in our league, and they're offensively skilled enough to be able to make some plays. But the ability to defend maybe multiple positions, and obviously also at the high school level, there sometimes those guys aren't asked to defend at the same level.
mhm.
Some of your better offensive players can kind of get away with maybe not being your best defensive player. Our league right now is there's a lot of parity. It's just a really high quality level of basketball. And so it's, at least in our program, I can speak for us. It's hard for us to put guys on the floor that aren't ready to guard. It's something we take a lot of pride in. And so I think the defensive end of the floor, it takes some time,
Mhm.
dependent on the student athlete individually. But yeah, it's a jump. I think anytime you make a change in level, it's a jump. I sometimes I'll visit with high school kids, or I'll talk to some high school programs and say, okay, think about the jump when you went from ninth grade to JV, right? Or ninth grade to,
Yeah.
to sophomore level. Think about the jump from JV to varsity. Okay. This jump's even more substantial, and so I think you got to have some grace. You got to have some patience.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys had a 20-win season this year. I think it's your third straight trip to the MIAC tournament, doing some, really good things there at Concordia. What do you think that success has been built around? Like, is it, are you recruiting? I mean, you talked about like well-coached kids, things like that. Is there something maybe, I don't know if it's different or unique that you're doing, or, how are you building this program to a place where it's been successful and, you're early in your tenure there?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to people. Number one, really good players make coaching a lot easier, right?
Jimmy's and
And
Joe's?
yeah, absolutely, man. So, but and not just talented though, but the right
Yeah,
young men. I
yeah.
think we've tried to be really purposeful and intentional in our recruiting, and that doesn't mean we get it all. We don't always get it right. There are young men who maybe we missed on, and maybe we should have recruited a little bit harder or whatnot. I think that's every level, every program has that. But we've really tried to take an intention. We've really tried to have an intentionality to how we built our roster, and that started right away. I took over in 2020 in the midst of COVID, and that first year we played 4 games. We were 0 and
Yeah.
4, and people have asked me a number of times, what was that like taking over during COVID? And I really felt for the student athletes in our program at the time, because they got cheated of a year. I mean, it
Mhm.
was the world we were living in, right? I mean, we had to do what we had to do, and we just weren't able to play. And so those guys didn't have the student athlete experience you'd like them to be able to have. As a head coach, taking over a program that, had struggled for a couple of years, it was probably a blessing, to be honest with you, Steve, because it gave us a chance to spend a lot of time getting to know the student athletes in our program, and then also spending a lot of time recruiting to bring in the right young men who could help us turn this thing around. And that doesn't change today. I mean, recruiting's a 24/7, 365-day thing. We're always recruiting. We're always evaluating our team. But I think people truly give you the opportunity to have success. any high functioning organization is centered around their people. And so for us, I'm really fortunate. I think we brought in some tremendously talented young men, but the right young men, the right fits, guys who really believe in our program, how we want to play, what we want to be about. They're great student athletes. Our team GPA last semester was like 3.5, 3.55, something like that as a team. We have guys who get it done in the classroom, so I'm not spending a lot of time worried about whether or not they're excelling and succeeding academically. We have guys who are just great role models within our program. I love having my kids around our team. I think our guys just really represent our program at a high level. So first and foremost, people. I also have a tremendous staff. We promoted Cade Niehaus to associate head coach this last offseason. And that was something I was really passionate about doing because Cade has had a tremendous impact on our program. His fingerprints are all over what we do. He's a young guy who just really pours himself into our players on a daily basis, really has, in my opinion, a high level IQ for the game, but can also articulate it, can communicate it. And then we added Coach Jacob Sobolik this year in the offseason as our second assistant, and he had a really, really big impact this year. So I'll be honest with you, I think it always comes back to people. We have the right people involved, but that's also not a static thing. I mean, that continually evolves. We have to continue to invest in the people we bring into our program. But you can't have success without a tremendous group of people behind you and with you. And then I think the second piece for us is, this is a unique situation. It's a unique job. Geographically, we're one of the outliers in our league. It makes our access to, some players a little more difficult in the recruiting process. It makes our travel, our scheduling more difficult. There are some nuances to this job that just, if I'm being honest, make it harder. And so we had to set out and kind of craft a game plan that would allow us to compete year in and year out, night in and night out in our league. And one of the ways which I think you do that is I think you invest in defending at a high level. I'm a big believer that toughness travels. If you can guard, in any gym, on any night, whether it's December or February, it gives you a chance to win. And so our program, unapologetically, is really built on defending and rebounding at a high level. That's something that, this year's team really, really bought into and really embodied. And that was fun, as a coach, to see a group of guys believe that the way we wanted to play gave us a really good chance to be successful. And so I think when you have the right people, and then I think when you put, when your values are aligned vertically from the top down and you put something in front of them that is a challenge and they embrace that challenge, you got a chance to have success. And that's something that our program, I think, has really taken a lot of pride in over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, the geographic challenge that you talked about is interesting to me because there's a lot of MIAC schools have access to the Twin Cities right in their backyard, right? So that's one thing. You guys got Fargo Moorhead to your advantage. When you think about like your geographic footprint for recruiting, do you have a strategy as far as competing with the other schools in your league, or do you try to find, maybe there's places they aren't going that we can win those recruiting battles?
It's a great question. If you look at our roster over the last few years, we have really, I think, done a great job in central Minnesota, kind of down that I-94 corridor. We've had some really talented high-level student athletes from Melrose, Ashby, just down down the I-94 drive. And that's an area we're going to continue to recruit. Also kind of, northern Minnesota, north central Minnesota. And then, you mentioned just our proximity to North Dakota. We've tried to also, attract some high level student athletes. Peyton Shell from Minot being one. I mean, we kind of knew in that recruiting process that he was a young man we thought could have a lot of success at our level in our league. And it proved true year one. I mean, I thought he was one of the best freshmen in our league this year. And he impacts the game in a lot of different ways. And that's our kind of guy. We want guys who can impact winning in a lot of different ways on both ends of the floor. And so, I think in any job, your backyard has to be kind of the foundation of your recruiting base. But we've also been able to get some kids out of the metro, especially kind of
Yeah.
the Northwest metro. Peyton Belka is just graduating for us here this year as a senior. Had a tremendous career. Finished as our second all time leader in 3-point field goals made. From Rogers, Minnesota. Grady Guida's in our program right now from Buffalo High School. And so we've been able to kind of, draw some, some student athletes from the metro as well. But the reality is it is harder. We're just not able to be down there physically. And I think presence matters. In the summer, we're down there a lot, right? And at AAU events. But once the season gets here and we're practicing or we're on the road or whatnot, it's tough to get in the car. And while our staff's happy to do it, we just like physically can't get down there in time for a lot of those games. If we're practicing at 3:30 and we're done at 5:15. I mean, even by the time we're on the road at 5:15, we're not down there for a 7:00, 7:30 game. So it does make it difficult. I think one of the things we've tried to do is be really targeted. I come back to that kind of intentionality with our recruitment. A guy like Grady Guida, whose dad, Nick, was a fabulous, had a fabulous career at Buffalo High School as a head coach. Nick's a Cobber grad. He had a great career here. And so kind of finding some of those connections to Concordia, to this area, to campus. We'll continue to do that. I just think we have to maybe be a little bit more targeted in our recruitment. We've also kind of started to recruit out of the upper Midwest. We've got 2 young men on our roster from the Denver area. We've actually got 2 committed next year. From out that direction. And so, for us, it just opens up another area of potential recruitment for young men that might be a great fit. At the end of the day, though, it's always going to come back to fit, regardless of where you are. I mean, you and I were joking off air about this, but like, I think it's a fallacy that student athletes are like being slept on, right? Or there's not enough exposure in this day and age with social media and live stream games. Like if you can play, like coaches are going to find you. I think your game does the talking. And for us, we're able to recruit an area, outside of our time zone because of getting out there on occasion, but also watching some kids play and then just having some. There are some nuances to that too, right? Like having direct airfare from Fargo to Denver on a daily basis helps, right? Or so there's a lot of different things that impact kind of who we recruit. But at the end of the day, we're always looking for the right fit.
Yeah. So we didn't really talk about this earlier off camera, but just as this conversation has evolved, I was thinking about like this era of college basketball with transfer portals and guys kind of like you look at Bennett Sturts, who was a D2 kid, then he goes to Drake, then he's at Iowa, right? In Fargo, Moorhead, you have a D3 school at Concordia. You got a D2 school in Moorhead, Minnesota State Moorhead. And then you got a D1 school at NDSU. Is there any like I hate the term, but like a lot of people are talking about how like mid-majors like feeder programs and they're like development programs for these bigger schools. Is that happening in this region with the amount of D3 and D2 and D1 schools? Like, do you see kids who are like, yeah, I'll come there for a year, but really I want to go to another level? Or do you find that your kids that you're recruiting, because you've talked to them enough and you know what their values are, you know what they want to do, you know what the school's the right fit, does it not happen as much for you guys?
Excuse me. I think it works both ways. You'll see young men in our league that may have, a really good year or two and decide to maybe kind of test the waters, so to speak, and may end up at a higher level. But you're also seeing a lot of young men that maybe go to a Division II level. It's just not the right fit. They're maybe not playing the role that they'd like to play, or to be honest, they might not be getting the experience overall. Just being at a higher level doesn't mean a better experience, though those two things are not necessarily directly related. And so you'll see young men. We've had a couple of young men transfer into our program. Jackson Logie was a transfer, Morris High School grad, had a fabulous high school career. I had everything from Division I to Division II interest out of high school. I ended up going to Augustana University, and I think had a good, had a good experience his freshman year, but it wasn't what he was looking for. And we were able to, add Jackson as a transfer his sophomore year, and he just finished a historical career here in 3 years. Went over 1,000 points, over 500 rebounds, and is getting a fabulous education. I mean, I think he's really, really happy with just the whole package here. Matthew Johnson from the University of Mary is another example. Those are guys that transferred in here just because they were looking for something different, but also I think an opportunity to have a bigger role, right? And play,
Sure.
just have a bigger impact. And they did in our program. So, I think you see it both ways.
Sure.
Thankfully for us, we really haven't had a lot of attrition. We haven't had a lot of guys come here and end up leaving. And I think that speaks to the experience that they're having, especially if they're patient, especially if they understand that this is a process. It doesn't need to happen right away on day one. I think that's a little bit of a misguided expectation if student athletes think they're going to show up and on day one anywhere at any level, it's just they're going to have it all figured out right away. And so guys who have just been patient and have really bought into that process, I think have really found that this is a great experience and it's a great opportunity and they've had a great experience. And so we've kind of seen it probably both ways. I will say you mentioned this, right? Fargo Moorhead's a fabulous college community. It's an awesome place to go to school. I think one of the strengths of this situation for us is we have an outstanding niche. We are a small community campus. When you're on campus, people know your name. They open doors for you. They're going to say good morning. I mean, I just at church this morning, I had a handful of people come up and just say, "Hey, great season, coach. Really proud of you guys." And I hate to admit this, I didn't even know who two of them were, and I felt really bad. And so people are paying attention, they care. But then when you're in Fargo Moorhead, I mean, between NDSU, MSUM, and Concordia, it's a college town. I mean, it's full of college students, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot going on, and it's a young, kind of vibrant, growing metro. So we're really lucky in that we have the best of both worlds. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting students here, like you mentioned the metro, kind of getting them out of the metro to come up and check it out. And almost 100% of the time, I mean, people leave and they go, "Wow, that was really cool. Like that was great. I mean, that was a lot better than we thought it was going to be."
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to ask what they thought it was going to be, because everybody usually leaves.
Frozen tundra. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really glad that we're in a community with MSUM and NDSU. I think between Coach Kemp and Coach Richmond, the three of us, I mean, we have a great relationship. We've kind of every year annually we've scrimmaged MSUM in a close scrimmage. Their guys play with our guys in the summer. It's just it's a great situation. And so that's one of the strengths, honestly, of this job and where we're at. I think a rising tide lifts all boats, and it's a really good basketball community.
For sure. I thought you were just going to say, we take them to Mix office, we get burgers and chips and we're good. And that's all we need.
I mean, the only fear there is if we go into Mix at the wrong time, we might see half a campus in there. And so that's probably not the right spot, but.
Funny. All right. So let's wrap up, talk about like the MIAC in general. Gustavus wins the league championship, regular season, and the tournament championship. What did you see from them? What makes them, I mean, I saw them in person, like, again, physicality is part of it. Like, you don't see a ton of college players posting up, guards. Like I thought of Illinois, the way they play they just hunt matchups and they post you up. That was unique. But what did you see having played them twice? You guys took them to overtime. You played them well. What makes Gustavus so tough?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that we played them well. I thought we guarded them well. We didn't score it really well against them.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty good on defense too.
They are. Yeah. I think it's a really talented group. Anytime you got a guy at the point guard spot like Miles Barnett, who's just really unique. I mean, very good athlete, really physical on the bounce. And I don't have the stats right in front of me, but for most of the year, he was shooting like over 60% from the floor. And yet, he's a guy that could get to the rim kind of at will. He's a tone setter for them, right, on both ends of the floor. And then they did a really good job this year of just filling the floor with shooters. I mean, there were times where around Miles Barnett, they'd have 4 guys that could really shoot the basketball,
Yeah,
and it
including their
stretches you.
bigs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it stretches you. It challenges you defensively to guard a lot of space, and it just opens up a lot. I to be honest, we were kind of uniquely able to guard them in that, we had a guy named Jacob Cook who I, the postseason awards will come out here this week. It might even be after this airs. I'm going to stump really quick for Jacob.
Yep, let's
Offensive
do it.
player of the year in our league, in my opinion. Unbelievably talented young man, impacted the game on both ends. But I mean, you don't average a double in our league on a nightly basis when he's being doubled almost constantly, unless you're really talented and have a fabulous year. Well, Jacob was kind of a unique matchup for Miles in that he was able to be really physical, and I thought we did a good job on Barnett twice, and he makes them go. I mean, he had a big night last night in that championship game. They're just they're a handful to guard. And then, defensively, I thought this year they were a little different than what they've been in the past. Just very, very connected. And they forced a lot more turnovers this year. And so, we talked earlier about dictating, right? There are a
Yeah.
lot of different ways to dictate defensively, and the way that they do it is a little different than what you see from anyone else in our league right now. And so they were tough to prepare for. And so, yeah, it's a really talented group, man. And when they're making shots from the arc, I think they're going to be a really tough out, because they can spread you out. And I like I said, I thought we guarded them well in both games, but we struggled to score. I'll be honest. We turned it over just a little bit too much at our place, and then it was a tie game at half at their place. I think I don't know if we had like 4 turnovers in the first half. I felt really good about where we were at. And then we turned it over like 12 times in the second half against them. And you can't win doing that, and,
Yeah.
and that's where it kind of got away from us in that game that I think we lost by 10 at their place.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was it's a possession game. You can't have that many empty possessions, especially on the road. And so again, credit to them. I mean, they force you into that, which is a little bit unique. We don't see a lot of teams in our league that force a lot of turnovers and kind of play that way.
Yeah. As far as other teams in the MIAC, other prospects, you and I talked about selection show tomorrow for the Division III tournament. You guys might be on the outside looking in, but are there other MIAC teams? Like, what do you see? Is there going to be additional teams to join Gustavus?
It's a really good question. Unfortunately, I think it'll just be Gustavus this year.
Okay.
They were going to be in either way, so they were going to be in
Yeah.
as an at-large.
Right.
Winning the conference tournament obviously gave them the AQ. I think we probably needed to make it to that championship day to Saturday. And had we made it there, even if we wouldn't have, gotten the AQ, I think we would have been at least in the discussion. I think we would have had 21 wins overall, 20 Division III wins. Our NPI, I think, would have been at least in the conversation. All of Division III now uses the NPI. And so it's a little bit more of a trackable, statistic. The
Kind of know
NCAA
where you
publishes
stand.
it. Yeah, you kind of know where you're at.
Yeah.
And there's a really good website that, I'll kind of promote here, and I have nothing to do with it, but I think they do a great job. It's the D3 Datacast. They follow Division III at a high level. They kind of track it as the year goes on, and they usually have, through running a lot of simulations, they kind of can figure out, okay, based on how the results of these other games go in other conferences, how is this team's MPI going to change and whatnot. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they had us, if our last loss would have been in the conference championship game, I think we were going to be on the bubble. Now, I don't know
Okay.
if we would have gotten in, but I think we would have kind of been on the outside, conversation of it. Unfortunately, as it is, we lost in the conference semifinals, and so we're not going to get an at-large bid. But it was certainly in play, down the
Yep.
stretch, which is it's a big step for our program. I'll be
For
honest,
sure.
to just kind of be in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have made great strides. I think you were the only other 20-win team in the league outside of Gustavus, if I'm not mistaken.
We were,
Um,
yep.
yeah, so great season all around. Now I want to have a little fun. I want to hear your favorite road environment in the MIAC, and maybe you don't have one. Maybe they're all brutal, but what's your favorite road environment? And then the 1 year I spent at Concordia, one of my jobs, big responsibility, was post-game meal. I had to order the Domino's. So I want to know favorite like post-game meal in the Fargo Moorhead area.
Yeah, so favorite road environment. You're probably not gonna like this. I might plead the fifth on that, because I just don't wanna give any bulletin board material to anybody.
Yep.
I would say that there are some road environments that are a little more hostile than others. There
Okay.
are some road environments a little more energetic than others. I'm gonna say this though, you know, I think playing at Hamlin is a really unique experience.
That's
I
what I was
do.
gonna say. Like, just
It's
go with
such
the
oh,
history. Like, it's fine. You
yes.
can say that. Yeah.
Such a historical venue,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna say this too, Jim Hayes at Hamlin does a great job. I mean, a guy who I have a lot of respect for the way that they play, the way that they compete. We've had some battles the last few years. We beat them here in the one game we played this year. Last year we split, but they got the more important one. We beat them in the regular season. They got us in the conference tournament. But he does a great job. There are a lot of coaches. I mean, there's a lot of really good coaching going on in our league right now. And I'll be honest, like a lot of it's happening too in some programs that maybe aren't winning conference championships, every year. There's
Yeah.
some guys doing a great job at some maybe more difficult, jobs within our league. But I think Hamlin's just really unique. The
Yeah.
the history of the building. We always joke it's got to be the hottest venue. I mean, like temperature wise. I mean, it's always hot in there. The noise is different. It's different, but I kind of like it. I'm a
Mhm.
sucker for the history and the tradition. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go with that. But in
Yeah.
terms of a meal, anything after you win, man. Anything after you win. I mean, it could be like day old stale cold pizza after a win.
Yep.
It tastes like it's, right out of the oven. It's like New York's finest deep dish. Like it's really kind of funny how that can change,
Yeah.
a guy's taste buds, whether or not you're winning or losing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if there's a specific spot, but I will tell you that the circumstances tend to change, how good the post game meal is.
There you go. All right. Yeah. Hamlin to me is the Cameron Indoor of the MIAC, right? Like, it's this kind of crazy, like small, hot, like, yeah, that's a cool venue for sure. Love that. I mean, your guys' place, I know I said road, but you guys are doing some renovations up there, I hear, this year.
We are, yeah. And I think maybe that's part of why I appreciate Hamlin's venue is that Memorial Auditorium also has just a tremendous character to it, great
Yep.
tradition. It's a great venue for basketball. And it's only going to get better, which is exciting. So we
Mhm.
do have some exciting news, up here, in that we're kind of Memorial's getting a facelift, so to speak, a new floor, some other kind of auxiliary additions, or things that are going to be updated, some updated seating, audio, so it's going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little long overdue, if I'm being honest. I mean, the character of Memorial needs to remain, and I think the way in which this project is being undertaken and the design is going to it's going to make sure that happens. I don't think the tradition character is going to go away. Everybody involved was pretty it was pretty unanimous that was going to be important to all of us, and the voices that were in the room as we were discussing it, is that we want to maintain what Memorial really is and what it means. But hey, a new floor, I think it's time for that. Some just other facelifts, I think, will be really, really tremendous for our facility, and just for basketball fans and student athletes.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, I'm going to let you go. This is great. I appreciate your insight. Congratulations on a really good year. I'm sure we're going to be expecting Concordia in that MIAC tournament again now for a while. So you keep it going up there. All right.
Hey, I appreciate it. We're okay with some expectations. It doesn't mean everything's always going to go according to plan, but
Right.
we've got a great group of people around us. And I think the last 2 seasons are, last 2-3 seasons, I think our team has really embraced the expectations of wanting to be, a contender each year, and that's not easy. That's a really difficult thing
Yep.
to do. I've always said, success is challenging. Sustained success is really difficult. And so hopefully we can continue to, add the right young men to our program year in and year out, and we can compete at a high level. So
All right. Well, thanks again. And yeah, we'll be watching the selection show tomorrow just to make sure. But if not, best of luck this offseason in recruiting with the renovations, and we'll check in back next year during your season.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Steve. I really appreciate it. This has been a blast.
Yeah, man. Good to catch up. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great to see you.
You too. All right, that's the episode for today. Thanks to Tyler Bormann, head coach at Concordia College men's basketball, for coming on and sharing his thoughts and wisdom on the game and recruiting and his program. A lot of exciting changes. They're definitely building some momentum up in Moorhead. So very excited for him and his program. Thanks again. We'll have another episode later on this week. We'll be talking about tournaments and environments and how you get Baylor and Gonzaga to Sioux Falls, South Dakota with Terry Vanderveck from Sanford Sports. So with that, thanks again. This has been the Splash City Basketball Podcast.
Back in that